In the deep waters surrounding Antarctica, where icebergs the size of buildings drift silently through the ocean, a sound emerges from the depths. It's haunting, melodic, complex beyond measure. It rises and falls, echoing through the water for miles in every direction. This is the song of the humpback whale, one of the most magnificent visitors to Antarctic waters and among the most vocal creatures in the entire ocean. Each year, these gentle giants make an epic journey from tropical breeding grounds to the food-rich waters of the Southern Ocean, traveling thousands of miles to feast in Antarctica's incredibly productive seas. While emperor penguins and Weddell seals are permanent residents of the frozen continent, humpback whales are seasonal travelers, arriving each summer when the ice retreats and the ocean comes alive with enormous swarms of krill. Their arrival transforms these waters, adding a dimension of grace and power that few other creatures can match. The humpback whale's story is one of remarkable recovery, extraordinary intelligence, and journeys that span entire oceans. The humpback whale is a giant among giants, though not the largest of the great whales. Adult humpbacks typically measure between 40 and 50 feet in length, with females slightly larger than males. They can weigh between 25 and 40 tons, roughly equivalent to 8 or 9 elephants. Despite their enormous size, humpback whales are surprisingly graceful, capable of acrobatic displays that seem to defy physics for an animal of their mass. What makes humpback whales immediately recognizable are their extraordinarily long pectoral fins, or flippers. These fins can reach up to 16 feet in length, nearly 1/3 of the whale's total body length. They're the longest appendages of any animal on Earth relative to body size. The scientific name for humpback whales, Megaptera noviangli, literally means big-winged New Englander, referring to these enormous flippers. The leading edge of each flipper is covered with large, rounded bumps called tubercles. Each tubercle contains a sensitive hair follicle, giving the whale tactile sensation through its flippers. Their body color is predominantly dark gray to black on the back and sides, but the underside of their flippers and tail flukes show highly variable patterns of black and white. These patterns are unique to each individual, like human fingerprints. Scientists use photographs of tail flukes to identify and track individual whales throughout their lives. Some whales have nearly all white flukes, while others are almost entirely black, with every variation in between. The humpback's head and lower jaw are covered with knobby protuberances called tubercles, similar to those on the flippers. These give the whale's face a somewhat bumpy, irregular appearance. Each tubercle typically contains a single stiff hair, though the purpose of these facial hairs remains somewhat mysterious to scientists. They may serve as sensory organs, helping the whale detect movement or vibrations in the water around its massive head. Their throat is marked by 14 to 35 throat grooves, long pleats that run from the chin to the belly. These grooves can expand dramatically, allowing the whale's throat to balloon outward when feeding. When fully extended, a humpback whale's throat can hold thousands of gallons of water at once, a crucial adaptation for their unique feeding strategy. Every year, humpback whales undertake one of the longest migrations of any mammal on Earth. The population that visits Antarctic waters breeds in the warm tropical and subtropical waters near Central America, the coast of Colombia and Ecuador, and around various Pacific islands. In the Southern Hemisphere winter, when Antarctica is locked in darkness and ice, humpback whales are thousands of miles away, giving birth in shallow, protected bays where the water temperature hovers around 75 degrees Fahrenheit. As the Antarctic spring approaches and daylight returns to the south, the whales begin their journey. They travel south, swimming steadily at speeds of 3 to 9 miles per hour, covering up to 1,000 miles per week. The total journey can exceed 5,000 miles one way, making it a round-trip migration of over 10,000 miles annually. They make this journey without feeding, living entirely off their blubber reserves built up during the previous Antarctic summer. The timing of their arrival in Antarctic waters is precisely synchronized with the explosion of krill that occurs each spring. As the sea ice retreats and sunlight penetrates the water, massive blooms of phytoplankton emerge. These microscopic plants form the base of the Antarctic food web, and they support enormous swarms of Antarctic krill, small shrimp-like crustaceans that gather in concentrations so dense they turn the water pink. A single swarm can contain millions of tons of krill, and it's this superabundance of food that draws humpback whales to Antarctica. Not all humpback whales make the full journey to Antarctic waters. Younger whales, particularly juveniles and subadults, often stop short of the further southern reaches, feeding in subantarctic waters instead. The oldest, most experienced whales tend to travel the furthest south, perhaps because they've learned where the richest feeding grounds are located. Some individuals return to the exact same feeding areas year after year, showing remarkable site fidelity and spatial memory. The journey itself is not without risks. Humpback whales must navigate through areas where orcas hunt, cross shipping lanes, and avoid fishing gear. They travel mostly alone or in small groups, though loose aggregations can form when whales are heading in the same direction. Mothers with calves tend to travel more slowly, taking longer to complete the migration. Once in Antarctic waters, humpback whales engage in an almost constant feeding frenzy, working to consume as much krill as possible during the brief southern summer. Their feeding method is spectacular and unique among whales. They are filter feeders, using baleen instead of teeth to strain enormous quantities of water and capture the krill within. The most dramatic feeding technique used by humpback whales is called bubble net feeding, a behavior that demonstrates remarkable intelligence and cooperation. A whale, or more often a group of whales working together, dives below a school of krill. One or more whales then begins to swim in a circular pattern while releasing air from their blowholes. The bubbles rise in a spiral, creating a cylindrical wall of bubbles that surrounds the krill. The krill, unable or unwilling to swim through the bubble barrier, become trapped in an increasingly tight column. As the bubble net tightens, the whales coordinate their ascent. They rise from below, mouths agape, their throat grooves expanding to create an enormous cavity. They surge upward through the center of the bubble net, sometimes breaching partially or completely out of the water with their mouths full of krill-laden water. As they surface, they close their mouths and use their massive tongue to force the water out through their baleen plates. The baleen acts like a sieve, allowing water to pass through but trapping the krill inside. The whale then swallows the concentrated mass of krill in one enormous gulp. What makes bubble net feeding truly remarkable is the level of coordination involved when multiple whales participate. Each whale has a specific role. Some whales create the bubble net, while others may vocalize, producing loud calls that may serve to herd or disorient the krill. The whales must time their ascent perfectly, rising together through the bubble net to maximize the catch. This requires communication, cooperation, and an understanding of each whale's role in the process. A single humpback whale can consume up to 3,000 pounds of krill in a day during the Antarctic feeding season. Over the course of a 4 to 6 month feeding period, an individual whale might consume nearly 250,000 pounds of food, building up the thick layer of blubber that will sustain it through migration and the breeding season when it eats nothing at all. Humpback whales are among the most vocal of all whale species, producing an astounding variety of sounds that serve different purposes throughout their lives. In the feeding grounds of Antarctica, they produce feeding calls, social sounds, and various vocalizations used to coordinate behavior. But it's during the breeding season in tropical waters that male humpback whales produce their famous songs, complex vocalizations that can last for 20 minutes or more and be heard across distances of 20 miles or greater. Each humpback whale song is composed of distinct phrases, which combine to form themes. Multiple themes are arranged in a specific sequence to create the complete song. What's extraordinary is that all male humpback whales in a particular breeding population sing essentially the same song in any given year. The song evolves gradually over time, with new phrases being introduced and old ones modified or dropped. By the following breeding season, the song has changed, sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically. All the males adopt these changes, singing the new version of the song. Scientists still debate the exact purpose of these songs. They're produced only by males and primarily during the breeding season, suggesting they play a role in mating, either to attract females or to establish dominance among males. The songs are incredibly complex, more sophisticated than the vocalizations of any other non-human animal. Some researchers believe that song complexity may indicate the health, experience, or genetic quality of the singer, making it a form of sexual selection. In Antarctic feeding waters, humpback whales produce different sounds. They make feeding calls that may coordinate bubble net feeding behavior. They produce social sounds when interacting with other whales. They create what scientists call whup sounds, powerful low-frequency vocalizations whose purpose isn't entirely understood. Mother and calf pairs communicate with softer, more intimate sounds, maintaining contact even when separated by distance or diving. The acoustic environment of Antarctic waters is dramatically different from tropical breeding grounds. Sound travels differently in cold water than in warm water, and the presence of ice, both surface ice and underwater icebergs, affects how sound propagates. Humpback whales adjust their vocalizations to account for these differences, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of their acoustic environment. Humpback whale calves are not born in Antarctic waters but in the warm, shallow bays of tropical breeding grounds. A newborn calf is already about 13 to 16 feet long and weighs approximately 1 ton. From the moment of birth, the calf can swim, though somewhat clumsily at first. The mother must help her newborn to the surface for its first breath, lifting it gently with her head or flipper. For the first year of life, the calf remains constantly with its mother. The bond between mother and calf is profound and intimate. The calf nurses frequently, consuming up to 100 gallons of milk per day. Humpback whale milk is extraordinarily rich, containing about 45 to 60% fat. This high fat content allows the calf to grow rapidly, gaining as much as 100 pounds per day during the nursing period. By the time the calf is weaned at around 11 to 12 months of age, it will have doubled in length. The mother's first journey to Antarctic feeding grounds with a new calf is particularly challenging. The calf cannot travel as quickly as an adult and needs to rest more frequently. The mother must time the migration carefully, arriving in Antarctic waters when krill is abundant but not delaying so long that the feeding season is too short for her to rebuild her energy reserves. During this entire journey and throughout the feeding season, the mother continues to nurse her calf while also feeding herself. Calves learn feeding techniques by watching their mothers. Young whales don't instinctively know how to bubble net feed or where the best feeding locations are. They learn through observation and practice, gradually developing the skills they'll need to survive independently. First-year calves often make mistakes, surfacing at the wrong time during bubble net feeding or choosing poor locations to hunt for krill. Experience is crucial for humpback whale survival. The relationship between mother and calf typically ends after the first year, though some associations may continue longer. Once weaned, young humpback whales face their first migration alone or in the company of other juveniles. Mortality is highest during this vulnerable period when young whales must navigate thousands of miles of ocean, avoid predators, and find food without parental guidance. The story of humpback whales is one of the great conservation success stories of the modern era, though it's a recovery from a tragedy of our own making. Before commercial whaling began in earnest, scientists estimate there were more than 125,000 humpback whales in the southern hemisphere. By the 1960s, when humpback whales received protection, the population had been reduced to fewer than 5,000 individuals. In Antarctic waters alone, over 200,000 humpback whales were killed during the 20th century. The recovery has been remarkable. Under protection from the International Whaling Commission, humpback whale populations have grown steadily. Current estimates suggest the global humpback whale population is now around 80,000 individuals, with the southern hemisphere population that visits Antarctic waters estimated at around 25,000. Some populations have recovered to near their pre-whaling numbers, while others remain depleted. The recovery varies by region and population, but the overall trend is encouraging. However, humpback whales still face significant threats. Climate change is altering Antarctic ecosystems in fundamental ways. Changes in sea ice formation and extent affect krill populations, potentially reducing the food available to humpback whales. Warming ocean temperatures may shift the distribution of krill, forcing whales to travel further or search longer for food. Ocean acidification, caused by increasing carbon dioxide absorption, affects the entire Antarctic food web from phytoplankton upward. Entanglement in fishing gear is a significant cause of injury and death for humpback whales. Their curious nature and feeding behavior sometimes bring them into contact with nets, lines, and traps. A whale entangled in heavy fishing gear may drown if it cannot surface to breathe, or it may carry the gear for weeks or months, expending precious energy trying to drag the weight through the water. Collisions with ships are another threat, particularly along migration routes that cross busy shipping lanes. Noise pollution in the ocean is an emerging concern for humpback whales and all marine mammals. These animals depend on sound for communication, navigation, and finding food. Increasing noise from shipping, military sonar, seismic surveys for oil and gas, and other human activities may interfere with these crucial acoustic behaviors. In an ocean growing louder with human-generated sound, whales may struggle to hear each other's calls across the distances they once could. Despite these challenges, humpback whales continue to return to Antarctic waters each summer, a testament to their resilience and the effectiveness of protection efforts. Watching a 40-ton humpback whale breach, launching itself completely out of the water and crashing back with an enormous splash, is to witness one of nature's most powerful displays. That such creatures can still thrive in our rapidly changing world offers hope that with proper protection and management, even severely depleted populations can recover. As summer fades in Antarctica and the days begin to shorten once again, the humpback whales prepare for their long journey north. They've spent months feeding in these icy waters, their bodies now heavy with blubber that will sustain them through thousands of miles of travel and months without food. One by one, they turn toward the equator and begin to swim, leaving the Antarctic behind until next year when the ice retreats and they return once more. Their departure marks the changing of seasons in the Southern Ocean, a reminder that even in this frozen realm, life follows rhythms as old as the ocean itself. But as the whales depart, other creatures remain, their lives intimately tied to the ice and the cold waters that surround this continent.